Welcome back. I was going to open today's video with Warcraft has forgotten what it's really about, but then I realized that isn't actually true. It knows what it's about, it just spends too long trying to be clever about it instead of embracing it wholeheartedly. So let me explain. In the Forsaken Heritage quest, Lillian Voss is an absolute badass. Every word out of her mouth is dripping with determination for the Forsaken or with violence against the enemy Scarlets. In the last stage of the quest, you push into a Scarlet stronghold full of elites. You would have no chance by yourself, but you're not alone. Lillian was actually raised as a lethal weapon by the Scarlets until she met her unfortunate end. Her first questline in Cataclysm follows her being raised and struggling with her new identity until her father orders her execution at the hands of her childhood friend, a Scarlet Lieutenant. And so, in self-defense and rage, she teleports out of the cage onto his shoulders and kills him there and then with one strike. As I said, you have no chance against these Scarlets, but you've got one of the Forsaken's greatest heroes with you. So while you are chipping away at their health, Lillian, nothing personals them like she did before, one-shotting them with her signature move. And it's not a big deal either. Every single pull, she takes a few of them out brutally and efficiently, using the blades that she used to help put an end to Whitemane, the last Scarlet leader, and Gandling, a major Scourge necromancer. You're given Heritage armor, celebrated for helping her out in the quest, but she was the big main character. She didn't pull any punches. It was badass. Ultimately, the Scarlets are the enemy of her people. There is no moral quandary to resolve. There's just the bad guy to slay. And for Forsaken players, this is their power fantasy. It's exciting, it's fun, and it can be contrasted with the Night Elf Heritage quest. And today's sponsor. It's Raycon's 6th anniversary right now, and if you hit up buyraycon.com/Bellular and you use the code BIRTHDAY, you'll get 20 to 40% off site-wide. They've even recently expanded with Raycon Home and Raycon PowerTech. Now, these are the everyday buds. They look, they feel, and they sound fantastic. They are super comfy, they don't have any dangly stems, and they just stay in super solid all day, can shake my head about, they do not fall out. And the battery life is just sick. They offer 8 hours of continuous playtime with a 32-hour battery life overall, which is so much more than what I'm used to, and it means they get through my workday easy. So with all that, it's no wonder why these bad boys have got over 78,000 5-star reviews. And in terms of my personal use, as I said, I do use these a hell of a lot in the office, and also going out and listening to podcasts, which is something that I do now to try and be more healthy. So I like how they, I guess, support that lifestyle, and going outside, the weather resistance is real nice too. They've got the features that I want, and even before the discount, they're often half the price or less than comparable buds from other brands, all while having their premium soft touch finish, which is water and sweat resistant, a very important thing to handle the delightful Northern Irish weather. They come with a wireless charging case, the cable, and 5 pairs of silicone ear tips, so you can get a perfect fit for the best possible passive noise isolation. And you can hit up buyraycon.com/Bellular to get 20 to 40% off site-wide. Thanks to Raycon for supporting the show. Let's go. Oh, the Night Elf quest. Maiev hasn't had as much screen time as Lillian in World of Warcraft, but Maiev is a legendary character. The warden who hunted her quarry for 10,000 years across space, going to a dying planet to finish the job. The huntress who continued to hunt, even murdering supposed allies she saw dangerous because they were mages, like Illidan had been back in the day. So this quest should feel special on paper. It's a small party of night elves taking out demons, their ancient enemy, in the Barrow Dens, right? But rather than be celebratory, it's introspective and reflective. At least that's what it tries to be. It has a sick action scene, but the rest of it is about how Maiev is convinced by a young, new character that she and the Night Elves do in fact need to change. One of these felt good, right? These quests. The other one didn't, which, combined with what's happening in Dragonflight so far, led us to a realization. Warcraft feels best when it's celebrating its heroes, and it hasn't been doing much of that lately. In fact, it's been doing the opposite. It's been tearing them down, homogenizing them, and changing them. On a hunt for ideas of what heroic moments stuck with people and got them excited in the game, we asked on Twitter, or X, or whatever, and we saw some fascinating results. Tons of people mentioned Varian's sacrifice, specifically being defiant at the end in the face of Gul'dan's taunts. You know, he died for the Alliance, that's their king. Great cinematic. Others called out the final Frostfire Ridge cinematic with Gunnar's sacrifice to buy Drekthar enough time to stop the invasion of the Frostwolf home. In fact, most people brought up different forms of sacrifice, mostly ones to buy time. And of course, that's always been this franchise's bread and butter. For a lot of us older players, Warcraft 3 was the introduction to the franchise. After 2 campaigns of death and destruction, watching Arthas fall, the Orc campaign ended in something unabashedly heroic. It ended with the defining moment in the timeline for all Orcs, the death of Hellscream. Grom, who had just relapsed into drinking demon blood again, made one final determination at Thrall's side and slew Manaroth. His dying words are that he is finally free. Thrall adds that he freed them all. Not too long after, the Night Elves then make a similar sacrifice, giving up their immortality to kill Archimonde and save the world. Illidan's story is another of sacrifice, first giving his eyes, the golden eyes that meant he was destined for greatness, and then being imprisoned by his own people for treachery, even if his betrayal is actually what saved them in the end. But it's not actually about sacrifice, even if it seems that way. It's not necessarily about the heroes. It's about one thing overall: sheer determination. Other replies brought up Illidan's stand against Xira. Now that line is horrifically cringe in isolation, but in context, with the weight of what Illidan has done, the 10,000 years of imprisonment was actually kind of perfect, as much as I was probably too self-serious at the time to actually appreciate that. But now, I've seen the light. I've watched amazing movies like RRR, and I get it. Go hard, all the time, don't worry about being cringe. And of course for Illidan, that happened before he then willingly locked himself in a cage with his mortal enemy, seemingly for the rest of time. Some brought up Darien and Tyrion. The Death Knight Darien Mograine fought off Arthas's absolute control in 1 minute of raw strength to throw the Ashbringer, his father's fabled sword, to Tyrion, which then turned the tide against the Scourge, ultimately leading to our victory. That wasn't a noble sacrifice, it was just a moment of pure heroism. Tyrion then was made a legend by his speech atop Icecrown and his destruction of Frostmourne. But that was the end of a long journey that we all got to witness in-game. He led the Ashen Verdict alongside Darien, setting aside differences to push into Icecrown and, step by step, dismantle and defeat the Scourge. Then there's the rest of Warlords of Draenor. I mean, Murad's sacrifice to save Yrel getting her wings for some revenge, Velen cleansing the Darkstar. WoD is absolutely full of characters being unashamedly themselves, and that is a part of why people really loved that leveling campaign. And it's not just those big final last stand moments, right, that show the character behind our heroes. Take the Isle of Thunder, where Taranju was gravely wounded, but stepped up to stop Jaina and Lorthamar from fighting. Runas the Shamed, the Wither Nightfallen, who fought against his addiction to help us out right till his dying breath. In Dragonflight, Tyvan, the Bakar, who is struggling with and finding his purpose. And even he has a moment of dogged determination, where he finds his place in the tribe and valiantly does his part. The same happens to our major characters too, like Varian's speech at the end of the Siege of Orgrimmar. The Horde had failed to uphold honor. He's willing to go for peace, but makes it clear that if the Horde fails to uphold honor, he will end them. He showed restraint. He respected their actions, but he still drew a line in the sand, and that felt like it had teeth. Or when Garrosh, right before his very rapid descent into madness, took absolutely no shit from Overlord Cromgar, right? Cromgar had bombed civilians to win a battle for the Horde in Stone Talon, so Garrosh threw him off a cliff for being dishonorable. I mean, hell, one of the first moments in Warcraft 3 that displays this courage and bravery is right when Thrall is, of course, meeting Cairn. The last of the Tauren are under attack from the Centaur, and so Thrall pledges to help. And that forged a bond between those races that's gone unbroken ever since. Forever bros, with Karn later willing to die to Garrosh to defend the honor of the Horde that he and Thrall built together. And on the Horde, even Nazgrim, he died a villain following Garrosh's orders, but he did so because he believed in what the Horde could be. And there's a through line here. More than anything, Warcraft is about celebrating heroism and determination in every form that it takes. It's an honest-to-God power fantasy. Everyone kind of wants a hill to die on, in a way. Everyone wants to love a person or a people or an idea and do whatever it takes The real world, of course, is full of nuance, of mitigating factors to heroism. It's complicated, it's frustrating, it's upsetting, because there's always a but to the greatness. World of Warcraft's characters were always larger than life, and even they did encounter a but to their greatness, like Illidan did on every step of his journey, even if they, of course, fell on the way a few times, like Grom, or even if it takes them time to push through their own doubts, like with Varian. They would always push through and make that final stand for what they truly believed in. They would always be someone you could stand behind. When you see Gen's nod to Varian as he let go of his hand, the sadness is there, but it's overpowered by respect. Even Garrosh was beloved despite his fall because he was a strong being of unbending principle. He was our enemy, but people did find him to be a compelling enemy because he was so goddamn devoted to his vision of the Horde, and he absolutely would fight and die to, keep them free, to do his thing. Remember his last hurrah in Shadowlands? It was one of the few things in that expansion that just about everyone liked. Defiant till the end. Compare those to the heroes of Dragonflight. Nosdormu has spent the expansion in a clear allegory for depression and malaise, and when he finally escapes, it's not by finding his courage, it's not by taking a mighty stand, it's subtle. Chromie makes a choice that's not super easy to follow as to why it helps. Nosdormu quietly thanks her, his mind then is changed by this action, but then it's delivered in the 10.1.7 patch through a quest where Eternus and him discuss the compassionate nature of wanting to change the timeline and why that is sometimes okay. And here there's unclear logic and unclear repercussions, where Nosdormu finally breaks free, right? He breaks free of this burden through the help of his friends in this quest in a contemplative moment. But it's not like this really comes from within him. There's no showdown where he faces his mirror, Morzond, in maybe a metaphorical battle, There's no confrontation. Maybe he doesn't accept Morzond. Maybe that's what he has to do to get past this. But there's no confrontation. There's just this very subtle change. And we can all talk about maybe the realism that. You could also talk about how this is technically his first step into becoming an Infinite, and there's every chance that Eternus and Chromie together opening up Nosdormu's possibilities will lead to him in the future making whatever the choices that turns him into Morzond. But fundamentally, in-game, it was all kind of mid, and it wasn't exciting. And ultimately, this is a fictional universe. Sometimes we go to our fictional universes because we want something that is larger than life. Alexstrasza, then. She reconciles with her old friend Viranoth in a mostly off-screen conversation by admitting she was wrong. When she's faced with the issue of the treatment of the Draconoids in Valdrakken, she's forced to admit that she's wrong, under the threat of the terrorism. And that's the right thing to do. But no heroic moments happen. We don't get to really see Alexstrasza shine through action. We get to find out that she's more wise now through some text. And again, I would say, we have to remember this is a game. Rathian and Sibelian, two hard-headed, stubborn assholes, bring their emotional turmoil to a close by admitting they were wrong, to want to be Aspect in the first place. Abyssian is given the spot as Aspect not because he won it through any determination or, action, but because he was the most emotionally stable of the three. And again, you can see there's some realistic stuff going on here. But then again, the way that it all happened in-game was very boring. And then Malfurion, the most important druid of all time, who apparently doesn't even have a role to play in the Emerald Dream patch because he's, quote, holding down the fort in Ardenweald. That's no way to treat your heroes, Blizzard. Like Maiev, like our Aspects, these are stories about how our heroes are being proven wrong and changing for the better. And in some cases, there are compelling emotional changes and decent, well-thought-out character arcs. But not the power fantasy that WoW was built on. People, in large, do not find Dragonflight to be exciting. We want heroes, we want that dogged determination, we want characters pushed to the brink, and their true courage being tested. We need characters to be willing to plant their flag in the ground and say, no, you move, I won't. We don't even need sacrifices. We just need someone to stare into the eye of an unquestioned enemy and roar that battle cry. And it's funny then that Viranoth is actually becoming the closest thing to a hero that we have in Dragonflight, because she is the one so far with unyielding principle who is willing to stand by that whatever the cost. It's both why she rebelled against Alexstrasza in the first place and why she later turns on Farak. That's a goddamn heroic character. This has been an issue for years, though, starting in Legion with Tyrion's death feeling very arbitrary, continuing into Battle for Azeroth with Sylvanas' motivations being unclear and ultimately villainous, and then in Shadowlands with Tyrande being told revenge is bad in a game that is always saying, hey, defeating your enemies is the first step to healing, and again with Bolvar spending more time being lambasted for not seeing his daughter than commended for his years carrying an immense burden and being humongously underutilized as a character in that expansion, again showing a lack of interest in even having the Lich King play a role. I mean, with Tyrande, I get the message. I personally do believe in renewal over vengeance, but the way to tell that in Warcraft is to give her that amazing, epic, determined moment, and then to have her rapidly feel empty afterwards, to realize after she achieves her goal that her anger was always a mask for that deep loss. It's so much more powerful if that is motivated by character action and a character realizing their own actions, rather than God turning off the lights, which is what happened. It's time for Warcraft to start celebrating its heroes again, because that is what Warcraft is about, and that is why people loved it. Contemplation, reflection, and change are fine. They're in fact more than fine. They're excellent, but they need to be backed up and led with some good old determined action. An epic speech and a charge into battle certainly wouldn't hurt either. And there we have it. Other than those glimmers with Saurfang, or maybe the very last roar of Garrosh, or even a little bit of, Anduin and his ghost dads. Those are the little glimmers. But that kind of classic Warcraft heroism that just bonds everyone together because it's so archetypically great and speaks to, all people, we just haven't had that. We've had stuff that it's been good, but it's also been boring. Warcraft shouldn't be boring. So I suppose then, do you agree? What is your favorite inspiring Warcraft moment? And actually, while you're here, what do you think is the worst breakdown of a hero in WoW that you've seen? Mull over it, let us know, and I'll see you the next time.